ES Audio.
Hello, I'm Lawrence Dallaglio. Welcome to my rugby podcast. Now, there's plenty to talk about after another cracking weekend of Premiership rugby. And luckily, I've got a stellar lineup of guests joining me again this week. First up, I'm delighted to welcome a player who needs no introduction, who has undoubtedly earned his place in the history books. It's England's men's most capped player of all time so far, Leicester scrum-half, Ben Youngs. Ben, thank you for coming on. It's a great honour for us all to have you on board. How are you, first of all, and how's the body?
Thanks, Lowell. It's good to be here, mate. I'm good. I think a bit of a tough game at the weekend, which was we've got some big games coming up, so we had a bit of a loaded up the bench. Those guys came on and brought some good impact. We weren't able to see it out, but I'm doing well. It's just sort of getting to the exciting part. The pitches are drying up. The weather seems to be turning, and it's a good time to be a nine.
Excellent. Well, listen, also joining me is, I think, the Evening Standard's most capped player of all time. It's, of course, sports journalist Will Macpherson. Will, how are you doing, mate? I'm very jealous of that wonderful quiff you have on your head. Mind you, I'd be jealous of anyone who's got hair, to be honest.
There's enough to go around, Lawrence.
You've turned your attention away from cricket now and back on the rugby.
English cricket's in meltdown, so I'm watching through my eyes there, but through my hands. The rugby season, just as Ben says, it's just a lovely time of year to watch rugby with this. The season gets longer every year, but I do love this period, April, May, early June, when there's some great rugby played, and we've had some great finishes at the weekend, which is good to see.
Well, listen, we'll get on to that in a little while, but last and by no means least, my final guest is former player and manager of Northampton Saints, and now co-host of the Saints Show podcast. It's, of course, Lennie Newman. A big welcome to you all. Now, listen, I hope it doesn't get too confusing with today's chat, but Ben, your nickname is Lennie, isn't it? Did I read that somewhere? Yeah,
really? Indeed.
Do you want to give us do you want to open up about that? Why, any particular reason why it's Lennie, or is it appropriate for a podcast?
No, it's fine. It's one of those, Lowell. I wish it was like a really good story behind it, but it isn't. I've got, coming from Norfolk, I've got 28 first cousins, and I'm the second youngest out of the bunch. And everyone seemed to have a nickname, and Benny Lennie was mine, and it stuck, and then Lennie, and then everyone just calls me Lennie. So, I could get a bit confused in this podcast because no one refers me to Ben. They just constantly call me Lennie. So, there's not a great story behind it.
So the real Lennie, you're actually not even a Lennie because it's not your real name. It's actually Dave, isn't it?
It is. Well, that's
what excuse have you got, bud?
Well, see, mine was it's due to Lennie the Length. Now, I'd love to say that was for anything else, but
this is not a Craig Chalmers story, is it?
No, it's not. No, you're okay. It's my boys even say to me, "All right, Dave," because nobody calls me Dave. But look, I went on my first. Again, it's a bit like Ben's. It's a bit boring, but so I'll tell you very quickly. I went on a whole season's cruise on the Norfolk Broads. Ben will know about that, and we went on this riverboat called San Marco. I was like 15, 16, went on first with a load of lads who 2021, took the biggest room with the biggest bed, and they said, why has the youngster got the best room with the best bed? And I foolishly said, because of my length, because I was 6'3", 6'4" at the time. So they nicknamed me Lennie the Length, couple of my rugby lads, and it stuck, and that's it. So
I reckon when you repeat that story to the guests in the nightclub, I bet you don't tell that story. No. But anyway, we shall move on now. I don't suppose you've ever been called Lennie, Will, have you? I can't imagine you have.
Certainly not Lennie the Length. I'm only 5.
Well, listen, before we discuss all of the games at the weekend, I wanted, first of all, to get deep down and dirty with Ben Youngs, because Ben, congratulations on becoming England's most capped men's player, taking over from my good mate Jason Leonard. Couple of quick questions before we go through some of the others from our listeners. But obviously, what did it feel like? I know as in the build up to any game, you don't want the focus to be about you, but inevitably, because of what you were achieving, and it is an incredible achievement, not only to stay in the England team for that long, but to to be, you know, to achieve that record, because Jason's career spanned probably, I don't know, 12, 13 years. What did it feel like? Presumably Jason would have spoken to you and congratulated you, because that's the sort of bloke he is. And, you know, what did the achievement feel like when you finally did it?
Yeah, I think firstly that Jason did contact me because he's such a gent, as did many people. And I think that achievement, it was very special because on my 100th, it was obviously an empty stadium. Yeah, where I got to run out and there was no one there. And for me, that was a massive milestone. And it was a very, very, very strange feeling. Yeah. Where this time I was able to have all my family in the crowd, anyone that supported me were there. Yeah. And I was able to share that moment with them. And I felt like that moment coming on at that game was as much their moment as it was mine, because as we all know, without the support of certain people, you don't get where you want to get to. So it was a moment of pride, and it was great just to know that, okay, they weren't there for the 100th, because if it had ended then and after the 100th, you know, it just wouldn't have felt quite nice, you know, wouldn't have felt this, you know, well, I was able to get that moment. It was great.
You got lots of messages, obviously, you know, the obvious ones being all your rugby guys and your friends and family. Was there any messages that you were sort of slightly surprised by? Were there people outside of rugby that had maybe read or heard what you'd done, or any of your old, you know, school, I don't know, coaches or anything, or?
Yeah, I mean, to try and narrow it down, but there was plenty of people that reached out. They were really, really good. Outside of rugby, like Stuart Broad, you know, got in touch, and guys like that. You know, Dan Bigger, you know, so guys that were even involved in the Six Nations for another nation were messaging you to say, you know, congratulations on the milestone, congratulations, you know, things like that. And that's the beauty of the sport, I guess, you know, that even people that, you know, you're competing in the Six Nations and different guys are messaging you. So it was quite overwhelming, actually. And I think when you get that much of support from everyone, you kind of makes you realise just what a occasion it was, to be honest with you.
Yeah, no, it's mega. And you know, I got to 85 caps, nowhere near 100. But I mean, to get to where you are is phenomenal. And I would imagine there's only quite a unique group of people that are in that 100 club and beyond. Now, listen, you're still 117 not out, but if you reflect on your career to date, and it may not, you know, your memorable moment hopefully may be in the future, but is there a game that sticks out other than your first cap and your 100th? Maybe is there one that sticks out in your mind as being the most memorable?
Yeah, I've definitely got a few, Lawrence. I think the tour to Australia, which was like my first start, we won in Sydney. That was a special moment in 2010. I think that we played France in 2015, the last game of the Six Nations, and I think we ended up winning sort of 38-29. We nearly won the title that day. I think we were 5 points short. That was a memorable game. My first cap with my brother.
Yeah.
So there's a good handful. Beating New Zealand in the semi-final 2019 for me was
that was one of my best moments. One of the best moments. I wasn't even playing. It was just phenomenal. Yeah. And listen, your playing career has spanned quite a few different England coaches. It would have to, earning 117 caps. I mean, obviously, I don't know how many you had, like 40 or 45 when Eddie Jones took over. I mean, you obviously laid the law down to him and said, "Look, I'm going to be here a bit longer than you, Eddie." So just so we're clear. I mean, you know, your relationship with him was. I mean, he likes to sort of get stuck into players and take the mickey a little bit. Was he a bit like that with you when he took over?
Yeah, well, look, when he first come in, I think I've had a lot of different coaches. I've had a lot of different head coaches, but obviously a lot of different actual assistant coaches have coached me at international level. And excuse me, Eddie, when he first came in, he made it very, very clear about what his expectation of me. You know, I come in for the meeting, I thought, right, and he's really complimentary to start with. And he said, gave me a bag of sweets or chocolates, and he said, right, I need you to stop eating these. I need you lean. I need you less weight. I need you moving faster. And for me, I was like, fine, because all you want is from a coach is honesty. Now, if he thinks that I needed to get better shape, he wanted me light because he felt the game speed up, then you just go and wait. It's your choice then, whether you decide to go, right, I'm going to go work at this and do it, or no, I don't agree, but I agree. I was like, fine, let's go do it. And yeah, I've always enjoyed my England career under Eddie, certainly. And I feel like I've played probably some of my best rugby under Eddie, definitely.
Yeah. I mean, and you come up against quite a few different opponents over that time. I mean, who was the person that probably gave you the most difficult match, game of rugby? I mean, often if you're playing behind a pack that's playing well, then it often changes the outcome. But you've got the utmost respect for all of the guys you play against. But who was the guy that you thought to yourself, God, I've really got to be on my game today? Otherwise, I mean, I guess it would be Antoine Dupont right now, maybe. But
yeah,
before his emergence, which has only been sort of in the last few years, who would have been the guys outside of him?
Yeah, certainly, like you say, Antoine Dupont. But when you actually look at my career time, someone like Will Genia, I've had many games against him. Just absolute quality operator. I've got so much admiration for how he played the game. Aaron Smith is another one. Obviously, Faf recently, again, he was a little bit arrived on the scene sort of 2018. So there's a lot of competitive guys. Conor Murray is another guy I've known for years. Mike Phillips, when I first started out, he was a really experienced player and I was a young player. And every time, he was a real aggressive nine, abrasive nine. So I've had a good fair few of it. I think growing up, one of my biggest people was when I played against Dimitri Yashvili, actually. Yeah. So I sort of spent years watching him, and he was sort of him and for Biarritz was an absolute talisman, I guess, and often got him to finals or big games, with his rugby nous and kicking game alone. So he was someone that when I first played against him, I was almost sort of in a bit of, cool, blimey, I've watched this guy for years,
And if we look at England at the moment, I mean, you've seen most challenges for quite a while, because otherwise you wouldn't be where you are. You've definitely seen off Danny Kerr, that's for sure. I noticed you were playing against him at the weekend, which must have been quite amusing. I'm sure you would have had a little natter together at some point and come together. But you've obviously got a few different challenges. Rafi, Harry is sort of in the mix. There's Alex Mitchell. There's one or two others that are pushing. I mean, do you not focus too much on that? Just think to yourself, look, it's all about me at the minute, and because I know that we all say, we get on really well, but ultimately it's a marriage and a relationship of convenience. You don't want your opposite number to do that well, otherwise he takes your place in the team.
Yeah, look, it's a really respectful relationship, isn't it? You get on well, and it's very respectful. It's an understanding that two doesn't go into one, but you can complement each other in terms of start and finishing and all those bits. But for me, I think, and I don't know about you, Lawrence, what your approach was when obviously you were with the back row and stuff, but you're very aware of what you can bring, and your job then is to then show that and sort of bring out the best in you as such. And from day one you compete, whether you're the one trying to get the shirt, whether you're the one trying to hold it. You've spent my whole career competing before these guys arrived, and when I'm gone, they'll be competing with someone. It's just the way it is. And I think the sooner you just understand, right, this is what I'm about, this is what I stand for, and I'm just going to be the best version of that. And whether it's good enough or not, that's for the other guy, that's for the head guy to decide. And I think you have that inner confidence of like, this is what I'm about, this is who I'm going to be, and right, it's either going to be good enough or it's not.
Yeah, well, listen, I wholeheartedly agree with that. Just talk a little bit about England, because you've had all the emotions over a long time where you've been playing really, really well as a team. You then had the lows of the World Cup in 2015, which we won't talk about, but then you built up again and you got the Grand Slam and the Championship, and then obviously the last couple of seasons have been a bit disappointing. What do you think has to change in the next 18 months for us to, for the fans to really believe, as much as the team believes, that you can go to France and be competitive and win the World Cup?
For me, the biggest thing is the consistency of what we do. Like, if you look at just the Six Nations just gone, there's a distinct lack of consistency in some areas of our game. And I think the quicker that we can become a bit more cohesive, a bit more understanding, there is guys that, like Freddie Stewart, France away, outstanding, winning the aerial game, but he's still only 10 caps in. So we need, he's going to be playing some big games for Leicester. All that experience makes a difference. But if we can be more consistent as a team, for Ireland for 70 minutes, it's 15 all. Last 10 minutes, we'll probably run out of steam, but we're not consistent in terms of what we're doing. And I think that's the biggest thing we need to get and growth as a team. If we get some consistency to areas of our game, become a bit more cohesive in that, then I think ultimately you're always going to be, with the player pool we've got, a very hard team to beat. I just don't think we've been able to do that consistently enough when you compare to what we did produce in the autumn to what we produced just previously in the Six Nations. There's not a consistent theme.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm not going to direct the question at you, but the consistent thing needs to be the selection as well. I think when teams are playing well, there's a consistent selection, and for whatever reason, Eddie doesn't seem to trust. He doesn't seem to trust. We only had 5 players that played every game in the Six Nations, which is a strange one for me. Just switching tack, because I will ask some questions from some of our listeners. We've had some brilliant questions, but obviously your club career has taken a different turn, really, with Leicester Tigers sort of just transforming themselves under Steve Borthwick. I obviously played against Steve and with Steve, and I've got a pretty good idea of the reasons why things have really turned around. There's been a different approach to recruitment. Obviously, there's been a change of personnel, and it's not just Steve. There's the S&C and Kevin Sinfield, etc. But the teams that I played in that were successful, there was a real clarity of roles, and you were very clear about what you were expected to do on and off the field. And I get the sense with Steve that that's probably the biggest change. It's just being really clear about what your roles are.
Absolutely, Lawrence. It's almost, we just talked briefly about consistency, Steve's message is very consistent. We're very, very clear about what we're trying to do and how we want to play the game, and the importance of the squad and everyone singing off the same hymn sheet. Yeah. I think when he first came in, he really stripped our game back, literally to the foundations of set piece and kicking game. And as the season gone on, as we had a pre-season together, we've tried to lay it on, attack and all those bits. But there's a real identity of, right, this is what wins games. This is how we're going to do it. This is the player pool that we have at this club, and this is what's going to suit. So now you've suddenly got a real you get your best pack out there. It's a very dominant scrum. It's a very dominant line out. On the back of that, you've got some exciting backs. You've got some big backs, and then you've got self and George, which would, you back yourself to manage the game and get yourselves to the right area. And you feel confident and very clear about what's expected of you. And I think he's done a terrific job. And the greatest thing, I think, that most coaches, and Lawrence, you'd had some brilliant coaches. Obviously, Sean Edwards probably someone that I've never been coached with, but I would love to have been coached by. Maybe I will do at some point, but I'm not sure. But for me, he looks like someone you want to play for. You don't want to let down. There's a sense of a sales pitch. As a coach, you've got to sell to the room. You've got to get everyone engaged about this is what we're doing, and absolute buy-in. And Kev, Steve has absolutely done that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you have to remember you're talking to human beings as well, and I think Sean sees just beyond the player. He wants to understand what's going on in people's, heads, etc. I mean, it's you've obviously now got Richard, you've got Wiggy there, and you've got Van Porfleet as well. And you're kind of you're in the middle there, so you've got a challenger coming up from who's just starting his career, and then you've got a guy that's probably played more club rugby than any other player. He's won everything in the game. I mean, presumably you're sort of you're. I mean, that's a unique challenge, isn't it? You've got his experience, and then you've got a young lad snapping at your heels who's desperate to play any minute that you're not on the field.
Yeah, absolutely. But one thing I think that rugby is massively built on is emotion, and I think that sometimes when teams get the emotion right, doesn't matter. They could not necessarily be the better team, the better drill, but if they get the emotion right, they sometimes win games they shouldn't. And I think the greatest thing that we have is that strength and depth, and 9 is a position we do have. So you're not expected to go to the emotional well every weekend. Yeah. So you can, you'll go 2 games on, have a weekend to re-energize, get your bits right. And it's not that grind as such. And guys then can come in and be emotionally charged, ready to go, Yeah. They're not going 6, 7 games, 8 games in the bounce, getting to like the thing, I think, the emotional energy of them is absolutely draining. I think that's really, really important for a forward, especially. But from my point of view, I look at it and think, well, that's great. I'm going to throw myself into this. Got 2, 3 games, boom, boom, freshen up, right? Emotionally energize myself, ready to go again.
And I was lucky enough to win a lot of things, but it happened towards the end of my career, the World Cup at 31, and then the success with Wasps came towards the end. You're 32 now, and I'm not going to tempt fate, but you're obviously alive in 3 different competitions, so you could be winning trophies at the end of this season, even. But in terms of the World Cups is obviously your target. I mean, you're on 117 caps. The obvious question is, have you still got the enthusiasm, the energy? I guess Borthwick and Kevin coming in has kind of almost re-energized you, really. And have you reset your targets for the next 2 or 3 years? Could you see yourself playing, club and international rugby for another 2 or 3 years at least?
No, I mean, I absolutely without doubt, Kevin and Steve are giving me that enthusiasm, that energy, that sense of like where we're going, and I want to be a part of it, and I want to help these young guys, and I want to bring Leicester success because I care about the club so much. My goal, of course, is to make the next World Cup. Beyond that World Cup, Lawrence, I think that'll probably be internationally. It's hard to see where I'd fit in after that, but I think certainly club-wise, domestically, I've still got definitely more in me post 2023.
And listen, you're a player that I, very similar to myself, who's played for only one club. I was at Wasps for 20 years. You've made over 250 appearances for Leicester. You've been there, I think, since the age of about 16 or 17, coming through the academy. You're certainly not going to leave now because you're just back in the big time and sort of in terms of the club's doing really well. But were you ever tempted to go anywhere? And I guess the answer is you may choose to go somewhere else post World Cup when you're not focused on England. But were you ever tempted to move away?
I was at times. I was, especially that time.
Should I say, was your agent ever tempted to move you away?
Yeah, of course. Look, the conversation, of course, happens. But certainly I had success early period with Leicester. It was all I ever knew was as a youngster was big games and playing in it, and then we just went through that really tough period. But I guess the biggest thing for me that always kept me at the club was like I felt this duty that how could I've got to be here. I can't just have the good times. The club was really in a mess. We should have got relegated really. We're very lucky not to, and the club had given me everything and I needed to give everything to the club. And it's kind of a strange way because there'll be a conversation to say thanks, Ben, but for all you've done, but that's done. But that I know that now that at some point that will happen.
Well, I think the key is being able to crystal ball gaze and work out when that's coming, and then just be able to nip it in the bud. But listen, you are there and you're playing great rugby, and I say this as a man who tried to work out how to beat Leicester many times. It is great to see Leicester Tigers back where they belong, and I genuinely mean that. It's I think they're a fantastic club. I was turning up at that stadium for many years, and the fans were obviously a bit down, and just to see that the buzz and the energy and the excitement of being at the Materley Welfords Roads is fantastic. Now listen, I've asked you a whole load of questions, but I'm going to throw some listeners' questions in there. We've had some great questions come through on social media, which I want to put to you. And there's, I think, a London Pride goodie bag for the one that we choose to use in the podcast. So from at the Sale Rugby Guy, he wants to know, where do you see the most potential for England's next long-term scrum half? That's quite tough, isn't it? In other words, who are the main challengers for your position? Well, I think we've kind of, you would probably say the guys who've been playing against you, really, Rafi, Harry, Alex.
Yeah, definitely all those three guys, and there'll be someone else because there's always people coming through. But I think you look at those guys and the way that they play, and they're all busy nines, exciting nines, and I think that it'll be those three that will be battling it out for years, and very similar to when me and Danny and Wiggy and Lee Dixon were battling it out. It's just the next lot conveyor belt comes through and they have a good crack at it, and I think when you've got that much quality, it's only a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, and Eddie might take 3 scrum halves to the next World Cup. You never know. And another question is from at @sparrowclough23, who asks, who is your favourite player? And I guess by that he means, who do you enjoy watching play, or who do you enjoy playing alongside?
I suppose, well, if I start with watching play, and if I looked at my position, like I say, I think Anton Dupont recently has been phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. And when you see someone, the space he creates, the strength he has in around the ruck and his running game, it's he can change a game. So for me, I very much enjoy watching what he's about. I certainly enjoyed Genya when he first burst on the scene, and then for me to playing with, I enjoy playing with Jasper Wiese. For a scrum half, you need quick ball, you need momentum, you need guys that are going to get you on the front foot. Him and Ellis Genge together, they just do as they're told, basically. It's brilliant.
Do this, do that, get me that ball. I mean, they are phenomenal actually, and I think it sort of breaks my heart that Ellis Genge is leaving Leicester, because it doesn't. It feels just at the time when things are going really well. He's the captain of the club, and he's we all know the reasons why he's leaving, and he probably, if he was given that decision 12 months ago, he may have made a different decision. But that's interesting. So the number 8 and the props. You see, you're a forward at heart, really. I know that.
Yeah, well, you sit behind them, so you appreciate. When we were at our probably really struggling at the club, we didn't have that dominance up front. And for me, as a 9, I always the pack gets you momentum. It's a lot easier as a halfback.
Well, listen, Ben, we'll come back to a few more questions later. I'll give you a chance to come up for air because you've been talking, poor thing, non-stop. So we're gonna have a little look at a review of the weekend's results, and we'll get on to your trip to Harlequins in a second. But Will, I'm assuming you were covering some of the London games at the weekend. Were you following Saracens Exeter, or was it London Irish away to Newcastle?
Across both of those, they're outstanding games, weren't they? I think Saracens kind of. Well, what I'd say about particularly Quins Leicester first. Obviously, Ben was involved, but that had the feeling of two of those top 4 teams really going at the end of the season. It felt like a playoff game at times, and Sarries then booked their place in the playoffs on Sunday, and looked like they were really frothing as well. So I think we've got a really exciting few weeks coming up. That race for 4th has got particularly interesting this weekend, with a couple of the contenders losing, and Northampton, of course, getting that outstanding win at the end of the game against Bath as well.
Yeah, Lennie, or Lennie Dave, if I can call you that. Lennie, what's Northampton, obviously, there's a lot of change there going on. It's another one of those great clubs, really. And obviously, you've got Chris Boyd departing at the end of the season. He's been magnificent for the club, and you're bringing on some really talented, younger coaches, the likes of Vesti and Dorse, etc. What's the feeling in Northampton? The feeling for me is that Saints have always played quite an attractive brand of rugby under Chris Boyd, but the question marks are just whether they've got the sort of strength and power maybe to contend for the big trophies against the big boys. And they're hanging in there. They've played some great rugby this season. You must have been delighted with the way that, particularly without Dan Biggar and Courtney, that they were able to turn things around, albeit against a team that's been struggling most of the season.
Yeah, it's a funny one, really, Lawrence, because when people talk about Chris Boyd, there was obvious comparisons to Wayne Smith back in the day, when he was there in the early 2000s. And some people probably look at it and say, has he been a success? Has he not? Who knows what will be in the top 4? But if you look at the brief that he was given when he came to the Saints, who, look, Jim and...
When you say brief, you mean brief and budget as well, really?
Well, brief and budget, yeah, you're right. I mean, the main thing is that, he had got to really, use the academy to its best that he could, and bring the young players through, because that was Chris Boyd's DNA back in New Zealand. And I think he's done that. When you see the likes of Tommy Freeman coming through, there's some outstanding young players, Alex Mitchell, who I know was already probably coming through the ranks, as Ben will tell you. But, people like Lewis Ludlam, who, it kind of fell out of favour with Jim and Dorian, who had done a brilliant job, but like any coaches that have been somewhere a long time, you get a little bit stale. And his other brief, which is probably the most important, was to have a succession plan for when he wasn't there, and that succession plan is Dowse, Phil Dowson, Sam Vesti, Ian Vass, Matt Ferguson, and this band of coaches. Now, there's a lot of people said to me, are they going to be tough enough? Because after the game, this is at Leicester, Phil Pask and I spoke to Freddie Burns, and Ben I don't know whether it was an international weekend or not, but we spoke to Freddie, and he said that Steve Borthwick's message to the Leicester players on that day was, get into the Saints, they've got a soft underbelly. And that's the case that the Saints have got. They haven't got a soft underbelly, but what happens is their consistency goes out the window. So I think, you look at that, and I think Phil Dowson will bring another edge, because I think that Chris Boyd has fulfilled what they wanted him to do. And obviously, going to your next part of your question about the weekend against Bath, they're bottom of the league, but they've been stringing some actually good
Yeah,
performances.
they're definitely a team that's improving. I mean, I think, listen, that was a crucial win, and you're definitely right back in the playoff mix, which is fantastic, along with Gloucester and Exeter. Ben, from your point of view, obviously it was a blip. It wasn't a surprise because, you come off the back of a couple of really tough European games, and I think Steve Borthwick, obviously quite rightly, shuffled the pack a little bit, because he suddenly, having only talked about the next game, he's realised that you're in 3 competitions, aren't you, really? And you can't keep going to the well with the same players. But I mean, I know that he's very much keeps everyone's feet firmly on the floor in terms of what he says. And interestingly, the players seem to be saying the same thing. But I know that at the beginning of the season, you guys were probably thinking, well, there's no way it's going to be quite as good as it has been. Are you now all really excited about the next few weeks ahead? You've got some massive games coming up, and are you guys just focusing on yourselves, or do you look at the table and think, look at the likes of Saracens and some of these other teams, or are you just very much taking it game by game?
Well, I think you have to compliment the other teams. We're fully aware that we are where we are, but we're also fully aware that there's some still outstanding teams. For us, the exciting thing is, we've got, obviously this weekend we play Bristol, and then we've got Leinster at home, who arguably are the best team in Europe. Yeah. And what a challenge, because that for us is a real marker of, right, let's see where we're at. Yeah. Because
there's a quick question for you, and I'm really interested. And this is not, I mean, I've been very complimentary about Leicester this season, that quite rightly, because the game, as you say, has been stripped back, basic, scrum, line out, defence, work rate, all of those things. To beat, for me, to beat the better sides, I think when the games are quite close, you might have to gamble a little bit and play a little bit more rugby. And I just wondered, there was a point in the game at the weekend where you were off the field, actually, but when it was a 2-point game and it was 10 minutes to go, and you you kick the ball back to Quins, and I was thinking to myself, if you kick the ball back to a team that's a really good side, sometimes you don't get the ball back again. And I just wonder at some point, whether there might have to be that little bit of a gamble in terms of wanting to, because I think if you kick the ball a lot against Leinster, you may not get it back that often. That's the thing. And whether there's I mean, listen, you've only lost 4 games this season, so who am I to question the way you're playing? I'm not saying that, but I do think against the good sides, there might have to be this ever so slight shift in focus.
No, I definitely agree. I think there's the element where you have to get the balance right, because the last thing you want to do is give teams like Leinster, who are very possession-based, the ball the whole time, and every time you get it back, you're then giving it back to them to then just D up again, because you can't D up for that much. Yeah. So there has to be a little bit of a balance, and as you come to big games, you've got to have tries in you, and you've got to have the ability to break games. And I think that's where guys like Genji and Jasper are so important with their carry game. But then you've got Namani, Fordy, Dan Kelly, if we can get him fit again. The guys that Ashy, who's just always in the right place at the right time. You're going to rely on these guys, because you're going to have to score points. You're going to have to score tries. And don't get me wrong, there's a time to grind, certainly. Yeah. But where we are now, the pitch is hardening up, the drier. We're going to have to get points in us.
Yeah, well, there was definitely enough in that game. I mean, I thought both sides were superb, and I'm pretty sure that Leicester were thinking, that's probably not the last time we're going to play Harlequins, and we'll definitely be up for it. Will, who do you? I mean, obviously Leicester are streets ahead of everyone else. I mean, we've got to have a little word about Saracens. I thought they were. I mean, Owen Farrell, Andy Farrell, skipped the generation. He's had a good season as well. But Owen Farrell has been magnificent since he's come back. I can't compliment him enough. I think he's been, he's obviously catching up for his injury. He's upset that all the conversation, understandably, is around Marcus Smith. I thought he was magnificent. Over 500 points at Stonex Stadium at the weekend, and he was really the catalyst. Will, what's your take? I mean, Saracens still, for me, look like the team that are ominous, because they're not in the Champions Cup, they're in the Challenge Cup, and they're going to take some beating when they put all their best players out on the field.
Yeah, they've had a couple of years away from this situation, but they know what to do at this end of the season, and that is what makes them ominous. I agree completely about Farrell. He's just been outstanding. He's been doing it in his kind of all court game is back. I suppose he looks so every department. He's running well, passing beautifully. That was a great break left yesterday, and he just launched that pass off his left hand, which was brilliant, I thought. And Mark McCall spoke about it after the game, and it's similar to a thing Ben was saying just now about finding that emotional pitch. And I think what rugby fans sometimes underestimate is how much Owen Farrell sets that tone in the teams he plays in, and kind of sets that emotional pitch. Sarries are looking in really good nick since he's been back, and he'll be desperate to right a few wrongs, I think, in these next few weeks.
Yeah, I mean, assuming that Leicester Leicester and Saracens are sort of just assume that they stay 1 and 2, and Quins could obviously be part of that conversation. You'd think that those three are kind of really going to make up, maybe not in the same positions that they're in right now, but they're going to make up 1, 2, and 3. The fourth place is really looks like it's Gloucester, Exeter, Northampton. I'm not sure that many others can have a say in that, but who do you see will get in that fourth spot? I won't ask Ben to put his head on the block, but I will ask you, Lennie. We'll start with you. Who can you see getting that fourth spot?
Well, that's what made Northampton's win on the weekend just so big, and the nature of it, getting it at the very end as well. They've got
nice, wouldn't it, if they come fourth and then a little East Midlands derby against Leicester.
Exactly, London derby and East Midlands derby would be quite nice in the semi-finals if that was possible. But they've got, I mean, Saints have got an enormous game this Friday against Quins. That feels like it could go quite a long way to deciding that. Exeter have now played a game more than Saints. I quite fancy Saints now after this weekend. I think Gloucester losing, Exeter losing, Saints winning, that was a big shift.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
And Lennie, anything from you?
Yeah, I think Gloucester are probably in the driving seat, but as I said earlier, the Bath game was so frustrating for 60 minutes, and then this character came out, and it was almost Quins-esque, the way that they kept going, and I think that was the character. But as Will just said, Friday night is going to be massive. Two teams that really want to run it, but Gloucester in the driving seat. But hey, that Leicester Northampton, if you get that semi, wow, that's going to be massive.
Yeah, it will be. Listen, I'm going to ask you all just to pick out someone who's outstanding from the weekend. We always have that outstanding, and I'm going to go first with a women's rugby player, Emily Scarrett, because I've been speaking to her quite a lot this season. She's obviously broke her leg. She's come back from injury, and I think she won her 100th cap, didn't she? And joined Benny as a Centurion, and she's an outstanding person, outstanding player, and so she is my nomination for this week. Lennie, you can be completely one-eyed and go for a Saints player, or you can go for someone else. We won't hold that against you because you haven't played for anyone else, mate, have you?
No, that's right. Yeah. Well, actually, there's two. You mentioned three. You mentioned Owen Farrell. I thought was brilliant. Theo McFarland, I thought for Sarries, he's a lock but played at 8. I thought he was outstanding yesterday, but I'm going to go for Joanna Augustus. I've got to put that Saints hat on because he really did. He's growing into really. He's not Jasper Wiese type carrying yet. He's getting there, but he picked up a knock, dug deep, carried on, and he was a good 80 minutes player. So
good choice, mate. They've always had a history of good number 8s in that Northampton Saints, haven't they? So he's got a few to look up to. Rodber, Shelford, Pat Lam.
Oh, yeah.
Benny, anyone that I mean, again, you may not have watched any of the other rugby, but anyone that stuck out for you other than obviously Jasper or Genji?
Nah, I think firstly Emily, she was born in Leicester. She's come into the club a number of times. Absolute incredible achievement. So I think certainly I agree with you there, Lawrence. And in terms of the Premiership, I did catch the Exeter Saracens game, and I thought, not that I'm surprised. I thought Faz was outstanding, but it doesn't surprise me because I know him as a character, and it's brilliant to see him back out there producing things like that because ultimately he's an incredible player. He's missed out a huge chunk of the season, and to come back, slot in like that, produce that performance says all about him as a character. So he was outstanding.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see what Eddie does with his selection around Australia, because that's going to be a tough old tour, that, and I'm going to imagine that there's a lot of guys who played a lot of rugby and probably will continue to play a lot of rugby for the rest of the season and may want a bit of time off. And there's those that probably haven't. So, it'd be fascinating. But Will, who stood out for you, my friend?
Ben mentioned earlier that it's a good time of year to be a scrum half. I really enjoyed the battle between Ben Spencer and Alex Mitchell. Spencer scored 2, Mitchell scored 1. Spencer scored a beautiful conversion as well in the second half. That low stinger, it was like a kind of left-hander's draw in golf. It was beautiful.
If you score 2 tries and your team lose, you can't be remembered, can you really? So,
I was going to say Mitchell gets it just because Northampton pinched it. So, yeah, I really enjoyed Alex Mitchell. I think he's a good player. So he's my outstanding this week.
Brilliant. Well, Will, listen, sticking with you, mate. The Premiership was not the only rugby in town at the weekend. Obviously, round 4 of the Women's Six Nations was in full swing. Do you want to give us a little bit of a roundup of the action? Obviously, Emily's achievements phenomenal. I think Italy, did they pick up their first win?
They beat Scotland on Saturday, which is quite a significant result.
Forza Italia, they can win.
So yeah, you're right. It was a good weekend of action. It was Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So France beat Wales on Friday, Italy beat Scotland on Saturday, and then England beat Ireland on Sunday. You mentioned Emily Scarrett was she was kind of the only story in town. Getting a 100th cap in her hometown was a amazing story, really.
But also the crowd,
had a record crowd there.
Yeah, I was going to say, how many people were there? It was
15,836. So that was a record for a ticketed women's game.
I think I played 20 years for Wasps, and I think only Twickenham have got anywhere near that number. To be honest with you, that's outstanding, isn't it? Really,
it is. And that's been the thing about this Women's Six Nations. That every week there's been another record crowd somewhere, and that's just so encouraging to see. This was the last time England will play at home in this championship. They're going to Bayonne to play France with the Grand Slam on the line this weekend. Both teams are 4 from 4. It's kind of been bubbling away, building up to this weekend. I think England have had the better campaign so far. They've scored more points. They scored another 11 tries on Sunday, 9 of them in the second half. They actually had a really slow start to the game. They only scored 2 tries in the first half. Ireland had. They've got a sort of difficult situation where quite a lot of their best players were away, already playing with the Sevens team. So England were expected to win well. It was England kind of put out the strongest side available for the first time, I think, in the championship. And they cut loose in the second half. Really sort of comprehensive win, 69-0 in the end.
Yeah.
And all roads lead to Bayonne now. So it should be a bit of a belter this weekend. It's Super Saturday in the Women's Six Nations.
Brilliant. Listen, thanks for that. Really appreciate it. Lennie, I want to talk to you about your Saints podcast, The Saints Show. You've been podcasting for quite a while now. I'm sure you'll remind Ben that you played against his dad at some point in your career. I'm sure you sidestepped him, or you ran over the top of him, or maybe he embarrassed you a couple of times. I don't know, but obviously Ben's promised to stay awake while you talk about Northampton Saints. But just give us a little chat about how did the pod come about? Who have been your favourite guests? You must have interviewed over the years some of the all-time great Saints. Give us a bit of a chat.
Yeah, well, I think the thing is, first and foremost, when you say about Leicester and the Saints, we actually have a good relationship because both sides and the towns are so.
You both hate each other equally as much. Is that what? Of course,
that's pretty much it. Yeah, the noisy neighbours, but I think you said at the front of this show, Lawrence, that everybody wants to see resurgent Tigers, and even when they were, at their lowest ebb. I think we've all been there. Well, you probably haven't, Lawrence. Wasps were.
Well, I don't know. We were a few. We've had some tough times, mate. I mean, we were not far off being relegated ourselves.
No, true. Yeah. But I think the fans are they're appreciative. Welford Road and Franklin's Gardens. Welford Road's obviously a lot bigger, but I think most players enjoy playing there. I certainly did. They're very rarely won there, but I locked horns with the Nick Young's, Ben's dad, and actually when they say about, I giggled because when they said Eddie Jones had said to Ben about cut out the sweets, I think that's what Nick lived on. He was a real. I don't want to use the word barrel because that's not right. He was.
Are you saying it's in the DNA then? Are you?
I am. Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah,
Ben's done everything to change that, but
well, actually, if you look at Tom, Ben's brother, that would be more the shape that Nick was when he was playing. But he's a good player. It's a good DNA. But
and listen, what a Northampton Saints fan. I mean, who have been your real guests, superstar guests that you've had over the? I mean, do you get to speak to the current players? I'm assuming.
We do. We speak to the current one or two players every week, and then what we do is we do our Legends series on the podcast. Right. And we've had Tim Rodber, Matt Dawson. He hasn't changed. Great bloke, but a pain in the arse. You know the story, Lowell, don't you? Know it's. But Buck Shelford we've had, and the list goes on and on. Paul Grayson, Nick Beale. And we keep going further down there, as we had Budge Pountney a few weeks back. We've got Ben Cohen coming up, and it does work, really well. It's because a lot of people want to know what the old legends of the club are doing, and do you know what, the players quite enjoy it as well, because it gives them a chance to have a rethink and but it's all pretty good memories as well.
Yeah, well, listen, I mean, Northampton, like Leicester, like all the clubs, have got some great history. Have won the European Cup. You've done lots of great stuff. So listen, well done on doing that, and keep up the good work. We have a section called Over the Line or in the Bin, and I keep telling everyone that I spent a lot of time in the bin and not quite as much time over the line. But Will, I think you're in charge. We only ask one question. I normally get it wrong every time. I'm not sure where I am on the scoreboard, but. Everyone gets a go to answer it, but it's fairly simple. Well, what have you got for us this week? I'm thinking it might be scrum-half related.
Not quite. Similar. It's got a link to the scrum-half on the show. So just to explain to the two Lennies, I'm going to give you a piece of rugby-related trivia, and all you need to do is decide whether you think it's true and therefore over the line, or a load of old nonsense and in the bin. As we mentioned on the show, the previous holder of the most capped men's player for England was Jason Leonard, who had the well-known nickname of Fun Bus. However, my piece of trivia for you is the only mode of transport to officially carry his name was not a bus, but a train. Is that over the line or in the bin?
Oh, you go first, Ben.
Are you talking about the Fat Controller? Is that anything to do with the? I'm pretty sure that was. Oh no, was that Thomas the Tank Engine? Well, Jason's clearly not on the show, so I can say that. But Ben, go on. I don't know. I wouldn't even know. I'll hazard a guess. Go on, Ben. You go first.
I'm gonna go in the bin.
Okay.
Right. Well, if Ben's going in the bin, I've got to go the opposite, haven't I? So I'm going to say true.
Okay, and I will go in the bin myself as well.
Actually over the line, it's true. Ooh. So between 2004 and 2011, a high-tech, state-of-the-art commuter train, so I guess it was quite fast, had the nameplate of Jason Leonard, and it ran on the South End to Fenchurch Street line, including passing through Jason's hometown of Barking at great pace, I assume. So yeah. Well,
congratulations, Lennie. Who said Northampton Saints aren't going to win anything this season? There you go.
That's right. Yeah, we've won that. Yeah.
Boom, boom. You're in. Listen, Ben, I wanted to ask you a couple more questions because we've had a load come in since I've been on. I mean, your rugby career has still got a long way to go, but in terms, have you thought at any moment about what might happen post career? Have you thought about whether you want to maybe coach at all in the professional game? I mean, you've obviously. There's a fair bit of competition around, isn't there? Richard Wigglesworth be coaching away, but any thoughts, or are you just sort of going, do you know what? I'll park that for a little while and just focus on the rest of my career for now.
No, do you know what? Actually, Lo, it's something that I'm fully aware of. That at some point it comes to an end, and I'll have to transition. I'll be longer in my next job than I will be this profession, and I've actually got. Testimonial coming up. I've got some great committee people, so I've just started relationships with them, speaking to them, getting to know them. I've got some brilliant people on board, so that transition is key. I'm not figured out exactly what I want to do yet, but I'm certainly aware of that transition, and I'm trying to begin that process.
Yeah, because I think on the O2 pod that I listened to a little while ago, you were one of your cousins, you've told me you've got 28 now, which is fairly hefty. They're doing a bit of coaching as well, so I suppose you've got first-hand experience of that. But sometimes, I guess. When you've given your whole life to the game, which you have, it's quite nice to have a little rest and a little break and a little step back as well.
Yeah, definitely. So I just realised I didn't really answer it, but coaching for me, no. I think it's something that I've seen a lot of people go into it, and people can be terrific at it. But for me, it's just not something that I feel that I'd be able to give everything. I'd rather do my rugby, finish my rugby. I'd be happy getting into punditry, media work, but in terms of coaching stuff, I believe that
perfect, mate. Give it a couple of years. Give it a couple of years. I'll move aside straight away, mate. You can come straight in. And if you can make more sense than Johnny Wilkinson and Clive Woodward on TV, then well done. Well done to you too. I'll be very happy because I get the old keep it short, Lawrence. We've got to go to an ad break now, so I think per word I'm the best paid pundit on telly, really. But there we go. No, listen, it's great. I know that you had some issues around dyslexia when you were younger, obviously, as did my lad, actually. I mean, do you still do you still promote that through the charity work? Or I just wonder why you got on with the forwards so well, really, because obviously you might help them with their reading and their writing most of the time. But is that something that that rugby has helped you in that regard? And it's probably something you'll continue to support in the future, I would imagine.
Oh, definitely. And do you know what? A lot of people, a lot of young kids or parents will come up to me and say, "Oh, will you sign this for my son?" And he's, he knows that he's dyslexic or what have you. And so a lot of people can relate to it. And it's just how I am, But for rugby was my escape, and I was able to, as a youngster, in a classroom, I'd be a little bit shy, a bit timid, a bit embarrassed because I wouldn't really want to put myself out there. But as soon as I got onto a sports pitch, I could be me, and I loved it, and rugby captivated me, and it's probably helped me be who I am now. And I think it's really important that I share it, because it's nothing to be afraid of or anything. It's more just, I think, more the young people that maybe do worry about it know that there's plenty of people that have got it, that it's not a problem. Yeah,
well, I think that, like all things, and you're absolutely spot on about that, is I think that you just want to know that you feel like you can talk about it, mention it. There's, when I was growing up playing rugby, certainly there were lots of things that you wouldn't want to raise in the changing room, you wouldn't want to even speak about. And I think nowadays, we've hopefully moved on from that environment where you feel like, if it's dyslexia or it's any kind of other mental illness, that you can talk about it. Listen, it's been absolutely fascinating with you, so I really do appreciate it, because I know you guys are, you're right in the middle of it. You're alive in lots of competitions. I'm assuming you're not playing in the Prem Cup tomorrow night, are you?
No, I'm not. No.
We're quite right.
On the bench.
For a man who has 117 caps, you don't get involved in certain competitions, but unless you really have to. What's I mean, I won't ask too far ahead, but what's once you get through the Prem Cup, what's the weekend hold for you guys?
We've obviously got Bristol at home, and for those that probably tuned in last year, we all know how that ended. Last season.
They've just won a game as well, so they've
just won. They're coming back to Leicester. The last game we lost at home was against Bristol in that game. Right. There'll be a bit of an edge to it, So I'm looking forward to it. And I think for me, I get to go against Harry's, which is great. So that's a exciting game. You look forward to those games, and for us, it's a chance to with Leinster the following week. Let's have it, boys. Let's get the momentum heading back the right direction again. Yeah,
I was always you never really want to go into a big game like the quarterfinal, which is the biggest game in the club's history for the last, certainly this year anyway. You want to go into there off the back of a tough game, but a win as well. So listen, we wish you all the very best with that. Lennie, I'm sure you're not looking past Friday night and Quins. That'll be front and centre of your mind and your podcast and the fans and everything at Northampton. It's a must-win game for the Saints.
Yeah, it is. We'll be focusing on that this week. And look, there's no two ways about it. Lose on Friday night, and I think you can say goodbye to fourth place. Somebody's really got to mess up. And I think it's going to be an intriguing game. So I think it's on TV. So, it'll be one to watch. But it's a must-win for the Saints, yeah.
Brilliant. And Will, with your Evening Standard London bias, you'll obviously have a little one eye on Harlequins and how they do against the Saints. Are you heading up there, or are you elsewhere?
That game, but I'll certainly be watching it. As Lennie said, that shapes as a massive game, particularly for Northampton, but for Quins as well, who are nearly there playoffs wise, but just not quite mathematically sound, I think. But yeah, that's a massive game. And as Ben's just reminded us, that Leicester Bristol game should have some spice. So I'll be tuning into that too.
Good stuff. Well, listen, Ben, a particular thank you to you. Apologies for making you front and centre, but I couldn't do anything but that. And to Lennie Newman, Dave, and Will Macpherson, thank you guys. Really appreciate that. I'm not here next week as I'm away on a bike on the Dallaglio Rugby Works Cycle Slam, but the podcast will return with the excellent and far more eloquent Sarah Elgin, who'll be keeping my seat warm and looking after you all. So do make sure you join her for a roundup of all the rugby action. So for now, thanks to my guests and thanks for listening. See you soon.